right, ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to start our industry forum on supply chain excellence through strategic integration, aligning the process, technology, and partnerships. First, we'd like to call upon our session chair to take the center stage. We have Professor Sanath Divakara, the Vice President, the Chairman of the Professional Development and Training Committee of ISMM, who's a mechanical engineer by profession, earned his Doctor of Business Administration degree in Entrepreneurship and Small Business, Master of Business Administration in Finance and Business Accounts, Master of Engineering in Energy Technology, and Bachelor of Engineering in Mechanical Engineering. Was conferred the title Professor in Management by the Institute of Entrepreneurship and Management Studies India, accredited by the American Council of Training and Development in the US. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Sanath Divakara. We're going to move on to the panelists who will be taking their stances. Now we have Mr. Tusita C. Gunavarnasuriya, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Siam City Cement Lanka Limited, responsible for driving strategic growth, operational excellence, and the organizational leadership. Prior to this role, he served as the CEO of Langwa Cement, leading transformative initiatives in the industry with a diverse career spanning multinational and local expertise. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Tusit C. Gunavarnasuriya. We also have with us Mr. Sajid Gunaratna, who currently functions as the General Manager of the Ceylon Agro Industries Prima, managing the consumer business cluster for domestic and international markets, a graduate from Oklahoma State University, US, with a degree in economics marketing. He also holds a postgraduate degree from the University of Leicester, UK, and also a chartered marketer of CIM UK. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Sajid Gunaratna. Mr. Nishan Heva Gamage, Chief Executive Officer of EFL 3PL Global, who serves as the CEO Officer of EFL 3PL Global, where his leadership since 2013 has been pivotal in positioning the company as one of Sri Lanka's leading third-party logistics providers, has been a driving force in shaping its operational excellence and growth, leading the expansion to a 1 million square feet warehouse footprint across 3PL and Freeport facilities with a workforce of over 700 employees. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Nishan Heva Gamage. Dr. Samita Pereira, currently the chairman of Lanka Satasa, brings over 30 years of C-suite leadership experience across industries from FMCG to diversified conglomerates. Held key roles at CBL Group, Harry's, CTC, Bat Malaysia, Caltex, Coca-Cola, Singer, and is known for his ability to drive business growth through strategy development, brand building, and people management. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Samita Pereira. And we also have with us Mr. Gihan Vidanapathirana, who is an experienced supply chain and procurement leader with a strong background in strategic sourcing and operational efficiency. A graduate of the University of Moratuwa in transport and logistics, he spent 9 years at Nestle Lanka PLC in various supply chain roles, eventually serving as head of procurement. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gihan Vidanapathirana. Over to our session chair, Professor Divakara.
Thank you, Dushan. Good afternoon, everyone. So our task is to share some case stories. If I just brief about the case stories, Case stories are what the stories that connect learning into experience, and it will talk about what happened, how it happened, and what we can learn out of that. So you must be tired now, somewhat going through some of the digitalization and CEO forum. We heard type of stories from the CEO forum as well. That is they are talking about the strategic level. So we also share some case stories, not in that manner, it's in a different format. Hope that you can take something as today's learning. So without taking much time, I would like to invite Tusit. We can go through kind of a story, what you can share today.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Professor. Now, if you look at the last 5 years, I think that has really taught us that supply chain is not only about cost and efficiency anymore. It's about being agile, it's about being resilient, and it's about how you keep your business going. So, even in that context, still being cost competitive is very important. And when you look at cost in a supply chain, usually I look at it in 5 buckets. The business model or the network optimization, that's number 1. Then your input cost, the alternative sourcing methodologies, maybe it's alternative vendors, alternative materials, alternative specifications, all that comes as the second one. Third one is your productivity. You have a lot of people in the supply chain, your manufacturing units, your logistics units. So how you improve your productivity? So the lean principles, the Six Sigma, your work studies, all that comes into that. And then the technology and the automation. So that also plays a key role. The previous speakers were talking about AI, ERP systems, and also how you can bring in different technologies into all these supply chain functions. Then the fifth and the final bucket that I usually look for in supply chain optimization is innovation. So the case study that I will share today is more related to that bucket. It's from Fonterra when I was working with this F&B company. And if you remember, in 2013, the organization had an issue with the health authorities claiming to detect some harmful substances in the milk powder. There was an issue. So because of that, the materials were subjected to additional testing, more authorities got involved. So that created an entire bottleneck for the supply chain. Firstly, to get materials into the market, to keep the product with the consumer. Secondly, to ensure that the shipping and the entire inbound supply chain was not getting blocked. So this is a huge challenge, and the team at that time in planning, procurement, and supply chain in Fonterra got together and came up with a very interesting solution, because suddenly the supply chain, the inbound supply chain was getting clogged. We were doing about 4,000 tons of milk powder at that point, and because it was not moving to the market, it got accumulated in the source country, which is New Zealand. And since we had given a forecast, we had to either pull the materials or pay additional warehousing cost at source. So the idea the team came up with is long lead time shipping. So usually you try to get your shipments as early as possible. You try to shorten your lead times. And a TEU at that time from New Zealand to Sri Lanka on average took about 30 days. But we were able to find shipping lines which had several transshipments, and it was taking up to 55 to 60 days. So in the end, you don't need warehousing because you get free warehousing on a vessel in ocean freight, but because you are going for this long lead time shipping containers, your freight cost also went down. So that's one case study that I would like to share where an organization faced a very challenging situation but found a innovative solution which brought down both the cost and met the consumer demand for availability.
Yeah, that's very challenging situation. And when it comes to these stories, what we discuss here, uh, it can be a challenge, kind of challenge, opportunity, and uh, it's something life experience. So as Susit explained, uh, what he found during the working in Fonterra, uh, the situation, how we overcome it, and I would like to share some of the very important, very famous case story about the Tata Nano. So you must have heard about that, the disaster positioning. So this is a kind of failure. And failure also we can get in this as learning. That is one of the another area. There is no hard and fast rule that we have to get these challenges, opportunities, all the positive sides. And again, the next uh, member. Actually, I like to introduce the members of this panel as not as the members or presenters. They are protagonists. So they are in the field, wealth of experience. So I invite Sajid.
Thank you, Professor. And I think good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to say we are here to maximize shareholder value. I think starting with that, I will, my theme for the first story is that, from crisis to centralization. So the time period that we are taking is from 22 to 24. I think there were two things. I'll set the context first. As you know, Prima Group has three manufacturing pillars. One is the flour, which is in Trincomalee. Other one is the poultry integrated arm, and Ceylon Agro Industries is the FMCG or the consumer arm. So what do? We take wheat flour and convert it to value-added products, and also the poultry, the same thing. And we have other products, about 16 categories. So in 22, we saw two things. As you know, the first half of the year was a little robust, but in the second half of the year, you saw that, economy was sliding. So at the same time, we had an internal issue. After 17 years, the local management was given the opportunity. So I was at the help of a storm. As you know, when you have a storm, you got to be very calm. So I had to get a team of expertise for supply chain as well, because the old team has left. Then apart from that, we got to look at the people, processes, and tools to put in the right places. So those were things in setting the context. And from the 22 budget, you saw that in 23, you were getting into, if anyone was in manufacturing, you saw that, your corporate tax from 18, it went up to 30. And you had a VAT 15% at that time. Okay, now it's 18. So, and also you got the social responsibility tax. So you had lots of pressures on cost-wise. So what did we do? So the challenge was, because of the 17 years of managing the business in a different way, so we had 5 manufacturing pillars in CAI, in Sidua. You had the dry goods, which has a 1-year shelf life. Then you had the chill products, which we manufacture in Valimada, the dairy product, so which is 33 days normally. Then we got the bakery range, which is normally 5 days, which we call it fresh. So the complexity is high. Then we got the frozen range, sausages, meatballs, which has normally about nine months. So we had a lot of complex supply chain because our supply chain was divided into, manufacturing was separated, but the logistics, procurement, warehousing, and value additions. So you see that, we had almost like 5 warehouses where you had lots of stock. The safety stock after COVID became a problem for us. So then what we did was, okay, we did with SNOP, we centralized the process. So that was one of the things. What did we achieve with the centralization? So we consolidated of the warehousing. Then when we centralized, we achieved very simple things, right? So we had to be responsive, resilience against the disruptions, and also we had to do the strategic alignments. So results were very simple. Inventory reduced by 35% because after centralization, warehouse costs came down by 28%, and total supply chain costs reduced by 22%. Because overall theme at that time was, we had to sacrifice volume for margin because you know that the exchange rates was very high at that time. So we had lots of issues that had in 22 going towards 23. So I would thank my supply chain team weathering that storm. And also, if you look at the financial impact, as I told you, inventory was able to reduce by 35, and warehouse costs down by 25, and total supply chain costs reduced by 22% in that year itself. So if you look at the operational excellence at that time, with the strategy we implemented, order fulfillment came from 72 hours to 24 hours. Stock accuracy came from 60% from 95%. Stockouts fell to 5% from about 15%. And on-time delivery came to 96%. So simple strategy, because it was, we thought decentralization was a norm that time, but now with the centralized, supply chain and also warehousing and everything, we were able to get this result, to maximize basically margin at that time instead of volume. Because your economic crash, lots of the FMCG products went through a volume turmoil. I think many categories went down by about 25 to 30% in volume at that time, and poverty went up. So disposable income was an issue. So we had to make sure we stay relevant, especially looking at the margins, because you've got to fight the exchange rate, then the taxes, and also make sure our market shares are secured. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a huge achievement through centralization. And I would like to invite Nishan to share your story.
Thank you, ISMM, for the invitation. And Professor, share our success story. I would like to go back to year 2018 or a little earlier. Those days, just-in-time sourcing was the buzzword among most of the manufacturers. They thought holding inventory is a kind of a non-value-adding activity. But continuous disruptions in supply chain and COVID pandemic and subsequent geopolitical tensions and wars around the world challenged this phenomena among them itself. So they thought of sourcing raw material a little earlier. Once you receive the raw material, again, keeping them backyard of their factory become a challenge and expensive. So they start using facilities like ours. And we saw it as an opportunity. We try to study their processes and learn what they are doing. So we are predominantly into apparel sector. We are servicing our contributions mainly coming from the apparel sector, around 60% from them. So I'll take an example from the apparel sector and explain this for better understanding of the audience. When you say that when you are going to stitch a garment, before that there are certain processes that you need to do with the fabric roll. So you can name it like inspection, quality checks, color segregation. Likewise, there are so many things they do. We study these processes. We build infrastructure within our premises to provide those services under our roof. And we train our staff to accommodate, offer those services. With that sort of approach, we train our staff to become a kind of a part of a manufacturing plant. And then they become kind of extension, or they are kind of workers of an apparel factory itself. And once they stitch the garment also, there are certain processes that you need to follow. So soon after the production, they used to send those fabric to our office, our logistic facilities. So we start studying those processes also, because they send the garment just after the production without post. There are certain post processes that you need to follow before shipping out the garment. So we train our people, staff on those activities as well. With that, they become really conversant on the apparel factory and what they can do. And we supply raw material from one end to the factory, other end. Soon after they complete the production, we collect it from the factory itself. So we train our staff to work on those areas, and these are very sensitive activities, because when you are supplying raw material to the factory, if your accuracy is not there, if you can't meet the relevant timeline, it's become a challenge. They won't be able to operate the factory line. Same way, when you have to ship out a shipment, if you can't complete those post-production activities timely manner, that become another challenge. So those are very risky areas, but we train people to the extent that they are capable of managing such situations. Same time, we wanted to have a foolproof solution to accommodate those, maintain those standards. So we invested in high-end tier 1 WMS and built in those additional controls into the system itself. So it's become an automatic process thereafter. People was not allowed to bypass the process, and if somebody try to bypass, at the next stage of the process, it get detected, because controls are already built into the system. That way, we establish a very smoother operation. And in addition to the system, we develop our own apps and dashboards. To develop those apps and dashboard also, we use our operational team. They are not professional coders like you see in IT firm or IT office, but those people are kind of who have interest in coding. So we gave them additional training to become better developers. The advantage of using such people is that they are the people who work on the ground. Same time, they are the people who understand what are the requirements in the ground level and pain points, everything they understand. So when they develop a solution that become more relevant, also from a management side, if you go and ask them to do some system, follow some system or processes, that's become a kind of a challenge. You need to go through a change management process. But when they come up with something their own, it's easy to roll out. So they take it as their own thing and they follow without any disturbance. And it becomes much easier for us to allow them to work on such an environment. So with those things, our operation become much more aligned with like a production plant itself, and our people also become very conversant on the apparel manufacturing procedures. So at the end, we become kind of an integral part of the supply chain of the manufacturer himself. And from other end, it opened up additional avenues for us to expand our business, and it became a kind of a long-term relationship with customers also, because it's not easy for someone to suddenly remove the operation and move to another end when you are providing that much of extensive services. That way, from the business continuity angle also, we become more secure. now I would like to call us as more than a logistics center. We are kind of a extension of a manufacturing plant now. So we have transformed our operation into a great extent with those initiatives.
Yeah, thank you, Nishan. And this is where the culture that you have to create to get the bottom ups, where the innovations we have to get from the bottom people, those who are working in the floor levels. And I think from Satosa Lanka, Samita must be having a good experience. Can we share it?
Thanks, ISSM, for giving this opportunity, and also thank you, Professor, for coordinating this. My learning outcome, the three scenarios actually I'm going to discuss. One is why a business need to have a strategy, and second learning outcome is why supply chain should have a strategy aligned to your business strategy. Third one is going to be a measurements, like why you need to measure and align for you to really achieve the final goals. So, in the first round, I'll talk about 1 and 2. Prof, unfortunately, that I won't be able to disclose the names that I'm going to take the scenarios, because I wouldn't take the permission. It could be Singer or Coca-Cola or Caltex or BAT or CTZ or CBL or Haley's or Sadasa. So one of it that going to be the scenario. So I would good to say, with all these the organizations that I have worked for and gone through, FMCG, manufacturing, distribution, all. See, these organizations consist of thousands of supply chains. And you're connecting all these supply chains together. In a primary value chain, if you take a manufacturing to a consumer, you will connect thousands of supply chains really achieve your task. Yeah? And so every organization really, they do that. So if you take two organizations in the market, and from the consumer point of view, they go for the either it's for the quality product or for the price or availability or speed of delivery, right? Or the flexibility that you are creating for the consumer. So you create and you consumer enjoy and they buy that. So in reality, what's happening, organizations, supply chains are competing in the market. Though we see in the surface, products are competing, it's not the products actually, it's one step behind. The supply chains who create the product or services are competing in the market. So it's a huge role for supply chain folks to really get this going. So with that preamble, I'll take why you need to have a business strategy. So every business need to have a strategy. So one of the organization, the scenario that I'm going to discuss now. So this organization had about 600, 700 SKUs they manufacture, distribute locally and globally. Yeah, you talk about 600 plus that SKUs. Just imagine. But 8 plants within a 1 plant. And so how do you do that? How do you really get your market dominance? And so first we did as a team was to sort out the strategy. Where do we want to play ourselves in the market? Is it a cost advantage that you're going to give in the market? Or value for money? Or you're going to differentiate further? Since market to market is different. Sri Lanka, that you probably play all these 3 elements. India, probably you will play only cost advantage, right? And maybe UK, that you will play on the differentiated shelves. So first you need to figure out, where do you really want to play? That's what we did. Where do we really want to play ourselves in the market? That's number one. Why? Without a purpose of a chain, no point that your existence is there in the organization. So once you understand, this is exactly that we want to play, and these are the SKUs that we want to play, and then it comes to the chain. How are you going to provide that? So I'm not going to talk about the marketing and the brand side of it. Fine, you play in the value for money on this X brand. and you play a low cost in this brand. You play your differentiation products in this brand. Yeah? It's like the Mercs and the Marutis and your Premios, right? And so once you understand that, then your chains need to create that. That's a fundamentally important thing where we really miss ourselves. We talk about AI, we talk about the efficiencies, we talk about the digitalizations, but not connecting the purpose to the market. So once you understand, these are my chains, this is my primary chain in my value chain, and these are all the secondary chains that I'm really associating to create this product or service, then you work around that. Because you as an organization today, I don't think that through one single supply chain that you can create that promise to the market. The competitive advantage, we call it competitive advantage, the reason the consumer buying product from you, and that creation has to happen through your value chain or through your primary supply chain with the support of other secondary, first year, second year, third year chains. But you usually don't do that. Usually you don't really look at from that point. You just talk to a supplier, you talk to your stakeholder or like let's say your manufacturing partner. But you don't really connect him with the market. But once you start connecting with the market, then you will see that you are realizing the reason that you are creating or your existence that which matters for you as a business strategy that's going to work for you. And so that's the starting point we did as a conceptually. We map it out. And this is what exactly the area that we are going to play. The value for money or the low cost. These are the price points. And these are the SKUs that we are going to work there, which competitively that we can work. And then the value for money, yes, this is what the SKU looks like. And the price dominance zone looks like. Niche, this is the price range. And this is the quality that we want to really create. And the other features. And sometimes on the hybrid, some companies on the hybrid we played. So then you backward work yourself and align your chains to really create that. So you measure that. Example, let's say a cleaning service that you connect your chain. A cleaning service which work in a bank versus a cleaning service in another organization will give a two different meaning for that chain. Yeah? A security firm. I'm taking an example which you can understand. Right? A security person who works in a premium hotel versus a security officer working in a let's say a normal organization need to have two different competencies. The same service, but you need to differentiate that. So your chains, associating with your chains, need to really understand your end game, and your role as a supply chain director is to really what? How do you really get these tiers connected to really achieve your goal? So that's the thinking. Once you have that concept in place, and then you align your strategy, supply chain strategy, could be your insourcing, you go for 3PL, right? And then you work towards that, but to achieve the purpose. It's not that you would really take the new buzzwords inside and then you do it as I think one gentleman is talking about on a vertical than the horizontal connection. Yes. So if you look at the SCORE model, like you're planning for what? Planning with the demand planning, your sourcing planning, right? Your capacity planning, your labor planning, and all these things will matter. Then you start sourcing, then you're making, and you deliver, and you manage your return flow. So you make it simple. I mean, that's what we felt in that organization. We make it simple, which could understand by everyone. And so mind you, when a one primary chain need to deliver three value proposition for the market, you need to have a hell of a lot of focus there. And then a daily monitoring is needed. Daily training is needed. Yeah, I always say, look here, a scratch mark in a Maruti vehicle versus scratch mark in a BMW or a Porsche. It's two different meaning. So that thinking you need to have in your value chain. If you can't create that, if you can't really see that through a visual boards or visual management systems or daily management systems, right? Or through your lean concepts you're getting in here, are you going to fail? So sorry that I can't tell the organizations. Should have had time to really get the permission from them and say, look here, this is what they would have really loved to hear that. But that's what matters. The concept, the purpose, and your strategy matters for organization and as well as for the supply chain to really connect. So that's one of the purposes.
Yeah, when it comes to supply chain, we can understand how broad the areas. So he was talking about the customer face, and I would like to hand over the mic to Gihan. How you feel about your experience?
Yeah. First of all, thank you, ISMM, for having me. It's a great honor. Okay. Uh, Before I share my story, I want to take you all to 2021, before the economic turmoil that we all went through. I hope everyone remembers that, at least the fuel queues that we all were in. So this was back in 2021. It's because of the regulatory change that the regulators was doing, import restriction, I would say. It was a fair decision from the regulatory point of view, but in my previous organization, we were buying a particular ingredient, a very common ingredient, salt. I think everyone knows, and most of the food industry is also using. So that was impacted. Now, you might be wondering, how come salt and import restriction would connect? Because we are being an island, we have sea all over our island. How would that impact? But it was not the case. Back in 2021, if you look at the industrial grade salt, which need a particular grade of purity levels, it was not available in Sri Lanka. Most of the companies were importing salt to the country for industrial usage. Now, this happened overnight, and luckily we had a couple of weeks stock cover to run our business. But I just wanted to highlight the criticality of this, because in my previous organization, 70% of the business, the products that we wanted salt, which means if you don't have salt, you will not be able to achieve 70% of your sales. It's like a showstopper, right? So I think you can imagine that how stressful the supply chain teams will be and how sleepless nights that we have all went through. But thankfully, we have done our homework at that time. We have anticipated all the risk materials we had in our portfolio, looking at the economy, and because of the COVID pandemic, when the economy was slowing down, we anticipated what kind of risks will be there. And we did a risk assessment and so, okay, these are the risk items and these are the action plans for these items. Right? So luckily, for salt also, we have already find out about the supply market in the local market and had already started discussions. The development is halfway done. But then again a question. So this import regulation came all of a sudden. By that time, we did not have the supply ready to supply. We were halfway done, but it was not fully completed, right? But then, the next thing that we have done as a team was to create that right context within the organization. It is not a issue of an individual or issue of a function. It's a industry-wide, a business-wide issue. So everyone has to come together and find a solution for it, right? Now there, with right context creation, we actually prepared a task force within the organization comprising of technical, from QA to R&D, engineering, procurement, from the business stakeholders, with everyone. So everyone is working towards one particular goal. So the easiest thing we would have done was to push the supplier, pressurize the supplier, you give it that to me, find a solution on his own and give the solution, give my specification to me. But That was not the case. We did something different. We partnered with the supplier, understood what are the problems that the supplier is also having. Then we figured out, okay, supplier is lacking some technical know-how. So with the right context creation and the organizational-wide alignment, we managed to find some experts in few areas like engineering, some production, some quality, and we actually stationed a couple of experts at our supplier side to support them, to develop the product, to understand what kind of processes they need, what kind of quality control parameters that they wanted to have, and supervise the product at the supplier's site. So that helped us. The supplier was also, when we go out of the way and support the supplier, so the business partner, the supplier is also giving us back the same support. So then we figured out another challenge. Now technical support is there, but what about the machinery, the technology? That was also a problem. So there also we managed to look at our own factory and look at the spare machineries that we have and disassemble some machineries and installed at the supplier side on a temporary basis so that the supply is ready. So by doing all of these, we managed to develop the right product at a very fast speed, and we managed to supply the product to the market also at a very successful manner. So I wanted to highlight few key things out of the whole story. So one is, when it comes to traditional supply chains, everyone is looking at efficiency and cost. But the risk mitigations, risk assessments, strategy are also equally important. So I would say the key success begins from the anticipation of risks and taken actions well in advance before your competition. Number two is creating right context within the organization. That helps to get the support from everyone. So rather than people blaming each other or passing the ball to each different departments, everyone come together and fight for a resolution. So that is my key message, and I hope you enjoyed this story.
Yeah, when you take the risk, there are two parts, positive and negative part. That's what it comes, risk and opportunities. So I don't know, it's lucky or unlucky. We had couple of experience during last 5-6 years, and that is why the supply chain become very prominent, and now it's very popular because there were a lot of recessions and COVID, likewise, many things we had. So these things were the creation of these stories. So I would like to turn again to Sid. We can have some very fast because time is running.
Okay, Professor. So, as a second example, I chose one project, one incident where the initiative did not go as planned. So, this is from my time with Hema's Consumer Brands. So, in supply chain, we spoke about collaboration, how we get different parties involved upstream, downstream in the supply chain. So, sometimes we outsource activities, either for efficiency gains or getting better output than what we can internally do, or for saving cost. So one of the projects was setting up a new distribution center with a third-party logistics service provider. At that time, we operated from our one and only distribution hub in Valisara for 374 SKUs throughout the operation to our primary distribution to distributors. In addition to Western, Northwestern, that's specifically Kurunagala, Putlam, that area had a lot of growth at that time. This is in 2015-16. So we wanted to establish a second hub, and we did RFP and selected a third-party logistics service provider and went into an agreement to develop this second distribution hub. And we got it going. It was a very successful project initially. So we had good growth in that area. We had certain logistics cost savings. But within a very short period, this 3PL service provider, and I can confirm that it's not Nishan and his company, they came back and said that they wanted this warehouse back, and they could not operate with us because a competitor was putting pressure on this third-party logistics service provider because they had a much larger business with them compared to us at that time. So then this party had to back down. So that's a learning where the business partners that you select in your supply chain needs to be properly evaluated. You need to have a long-term approach. It cannot be a very short-term, tactical, cost-driven decision, but much longer consideration has to be given. You have to identify the proper business partners. You have to go with proper contracting. And going back to what Gihan was talking about, you need to identify the risks and also the mitigation measures when you go into a project. So I won't call it a failure story in contrast to a success story, but a very clear learning where you need to do your risk analysis properly, you need to do the due diligence on your supply chain business partners, and also within your supply chain, you need to be ready for any contingency because there can be macroeconomic driven environmental challenges, there can be pandemics like COVID, there can be terrorist activities, but not only that, but sometimes your supply chain business partners also gives you surprises, so you need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, lucky we have a good combination and interconnected all the companies manufacturing services. Again, I would like to ask Sajid.
Thank you, Professor. The second story also stems from the first one. As you know, the economy degrew in 22 by about 7%. And for the second consecutive year, the 23, it's about 3.3. Then it bounced back to about 4, and now we experience something like over 4.5%. So what happened in 23? Apart from the taxes that we were under pressure, we also had another surprises. Especially, we got to protect the margins further and also protect our volumes because in 2022, with the economy crash about 7.8%, then the pressure was too high. So what did we do? So simply, we had a lot of imported items. So what we had to do is that, to minimize the forex risk, we reduce the forex risk by 90 lead days, right? Then multi-category safety stocks, was tying capital. So we got to look at that. So our supply chain had to work day and night. And you know that at that time, the competitors were aggressively pricing down. So when you had a recessionary period, it was very hard to increase prices. But to keep your margins, so optimization of supply chain was at the highest. So first we did was a local revolution. That means, we got to switch to local imported materials. All local alternatives. So our supply chain had to work very hard to find that to match the quality also. The lead times from 90 days, it came down to 15 days. So it was a surprise for us. Forex pressure reduced by 35%, and 12 new local suppliers were onboarded, which was actually brilliant effort by our supply chain. Then the second one I would like to say is the supply network optimization. So onboarding strategic partner depends on many things. I think Tushar said that, your partners got to have the same values as what you believe. So then dual sourcing was very critical. For 80% of our materials were dual sourcing. Develop 5 local vendors with international standards. And I think we implemented the performance scoreboard, which is something that, we wanted to make sure that, when we centralized, then, we looked at how to further maximize with the economy. Then I think we did another one, which is, I would say, the number 4, was the logistic innovation. The first time that we had the compartmentalized, vehicles, especially for chilled and frozen, and also we were the first to implement the backhauling of rail, because at that time, per kilometer, going through the road was very high when you compare to the railway. But now many companies are optimizing the railway. I think, thanks to our supply chain team, we initiated that first. Then, if you really look at, transportation cost was something, because we had a formula. There's a, variable component and a fixed cost component. I think there was a formula like the fuel formula. So I think supply chain guys did a wonderful job to make sure our, especially the transportation costs stayed on track. Then we also looked at the carbon footprint, which also, is one of the areas of the supply chain. Then strategy 5 was mainly the digitalization transformation, the real-time inventory. I think lot sensors were implemented, productive analysis, which were something, and also we had some, I think someone talking about blockchain traceability, which has all been implemented now. So SNOP runs very well. It's, and I think now with the factories, optimizing, and it's a now centralized procurement, which actually reduces our inventory. And also we have about 300 SKUs, finished goods, and our route to markets is different, because as I told you, our supply chain is a little complex. We got the dry goods, we got the chill, we got the fresh, and we have the frozen. So with that 2 years, we were able to reduce the supply chain cost about 18%, which was, I think, was remarkable at that time, and inventory about 32%. So thank you very much for the second story.
Yeah, it's a bit analytical, and no numbers, no improvement. So we need numbers. That's what supply chain analytics become very important. Over to you, Nishan.
Thank you, Professor. In this round, I would like to discuss about partnerships and collaborations that we have as a company, because what we believe is without those collaborations, business cannot be sustained. So start with, we have already signed a MOU with ISMM. So we have now obligation for your student to provide the space for on the ground training. If when we have internship requirements, we should be able to provide this space again. And if they want real-time experience or explore the experiences, how we work and all that, we are prepared to give that opportunity. Secondly, we have published a book in collaboration with Kotalawala Defense University. It's called The Infinite Chain, that will explain how you should construct a warehouse or a building, and till you've developed your standard operating procedures and key performance indicators, everything is properly defined in that book. That will be very useful for the next generations. Thirdly, we have an agreement with another lean consultancy company. They visit our facilities twice a week or so, and they train our staff on lean practices, and they observe how we operate and give us feedback. Same time, he has his external team who bring them to our facility and let them see how we operate, and if they also have any feedback, they can share with us. That way we work very collaboratively with him also. In the same time, we work with other industry players, service providers in our industry. Whenever we have an overflow situation, or when we are getting an uncomfortable cargo for our warehouses, we use their space, and whenever they have such situation, they come to us. Or when they have any contingency situations also, we have helped them in the past. Even now, we are prepared to work collaboratively with them. Last not the least, most importantly, our customers, we always treat them as our prime source of the business. Without them, we won't be able to develop our business. As Tusit mentioned, we have never let down a customer like what he had to face. We really unfortunate situation, but we should not fall into such sort of actions, because that will tarnish our image as an industry. I can share another experience with Gyan. When he was at his previous place, we were working closely with him, but for some reason we have to take a part in the business. But still today, we work very closely and talk to each other very friendly manner. There's no hard and, feelings like that to disappoint our relationship. That way we maintain our ethics as a company, and I believe those things are important to develop logistics, and because we are from the service industry. If you don't maintain such standards, we may not be able to propel as an industry, as a company.
Yes, thank you, Nishan. And I'll quickly go to Gihans to share the second story. And
Thank you, Professor.
we have around 9 minutes. So,
Super. So I'll quickly wrap it up. So my next story is about my current workplace, Lion Brewery Ceylon. So that means it's about beer. Excited about it? How about flavored beers? So this story is about a flavored beer that we were manufacturing, right? And also it's about a moment of truth. So as manufacturers, we call moment of truth when we produce a product, when we put it in the shelf. So if it is a beer, if we put it to a wine store, when the consumer goes into the shelf, whether the consumer picking your product or something else, or going to a substitute, that is moment of truth. So this was a challenge, I would say, we had, and I wanted to share that what we have done about it. Now, in this flavored beer, the main issue we had was the cost of production, the cost of the raw materials we have. Now, when we analyzed the recipe, the main cost was deriving from a flavor compound, a liquid flavor compound. Now, so this was a problem, so we wanted to somehow solve this and support the business also. Now, rather than trying to solve a problem in isolation, like let's say, so I am representing procurement. So rather than we try to solve it alone, what we wanted to do is to partner with business, with the marketing, with innovation teams, R&D, our quality, and all of us came together and looked at what we can do about it. Then there was one interesting point. When we look at this liquid flavor compound, we understood like 40 to 50% of it is water. So when it comes to liquid flavor, why it is so expensive, because when we import it, so it has to come in huge quantities, and also it should come in reefer containers. So the cost of logistics and freight is quite expensive. So what we have done differently is with the team, we actually try to deblend the product. So by deblending, we actually try to import the minimal product in concentrated format, and rest of the ingredients we wanted to source from local sources. So with the support of everyone, we somehow cracked it without compromising any sensorial or any properties of the product, but eventually reducing the cost of the product by 50%. So what I wanted to overall tell you is, if the easiest thing we would have done was to go for a different supplier, and if that supplier is not offering a lower price, so go to another supplier. So we could have done, so we have done that also. But ultimately we did not get the required tangible benefit out of that exercise. But this was a quite a out of the box thinking, I would say, challenging the status quo and finding a different creative way to support the business by reducing the cost. And by that, business can also, take decision on the product and make it affordable. Also, trying to reach more and more customers. So that is what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Gihan. So I turn to Samita.
I think in my previous discussion, I was talking about strategy and the supply chain strategy. That's in summary, a business should know, all of us should know if you're working in one organization, all of us should know the product or service that we create, the reasons for consumer buying that product or service. Otherwise, we all work in a different manner. So that's your strategy you crafted. Then you look at, I was talking about in this organization, we created the chains to be aligned to that reason, to create that reason. It's important. Even at Satosa, that's what we're doing on that. Since it's a public, I'm going to tell you all on. The Satosa also the same thing we did. We create the reasons, it's a low-cost strategy, and we want to connect the farmers with the market. We want to connect the SME with the market, and we want to create a good organization to do all these three. So that's the purpose, and then we are aligning our all other chains to there. So in the other example I was talking about, so how we did was actually, so it's not easy, so we need to have a collective effort, and the gentleman was talking about the top to bottom, the thinking has to be there. Yes, thanks to that chairman, that he had that vision to really drive this organization. Today is a market leader for many segments, and so what we did was actually we start measuring it. Measure what matters. So you have thousands of supply chains to connect to your main value chain, and then you have a reason collectively to create. So you need to start measuring what matters for your end consumer. It's not that you silo measurements. No, it's horizontally. The organizations create value horizontally. I believe that you're all aware of this. So then you need to create measurements that matters for the consumer. And so whether you are in manufacturing, you take the OE, or your capacity planning, or your labor, or your workforce planning, right? Your materials, all whatever, start measuring it for end consumer. So in a supply chain jargon, planning for what? Planning to do or planning to achieve your competitive advantage in the market, or the reason that you are creating it. So all the planning measurements lead to drive that and make sense that if your availability, you're not OTIF, you are talking about OTIF, yeah, what's the impact on OTIF on planning? You connect that. So when you start thinking on that sense, it matters. It matters for the whole chain as well. Then you are sourcing. Sourcing for what? Sourcing to create a better advantage. If you are a low-cost strategy, yes, you are sourcing for sustain your cost advantage. You are sourcing for your value for money strategy. You are sourcing for your niche products. So managing about 600, 700 products, getting a clarity on that, what, where, and how they play around there, then you start your measurement, start your chain to measure. And then reward as well. So when you start rewarding, you have to reward the right thing. The biggest challenge that we had was the people. So how do you can have a measurement, but how do you sustain this? And then your capability matters. So I can remember, we were getting involved, talk or discussing the strategy for the people up to the executive level, or sometimes the line leader level. Talking about, these are the portfolio. This is the portfolio we're going to work in this segment. The cost matters for us, right? In this portfolio set, we want to have the value as well as the cost. This particular portfolio set, people are paying high. Therefore, they're looking for a good quality. So we inculcate that thinking first in the line. And then we start training. I mean, this company, I think we had at least about 4 black belts and about 10 yellow and all. We inculcate that thing. We gave the capability for them. And I can remember ISSM, we got involved and we got all these, the warehousing and the other people we made it a must. And they need to have the diploma of ISSM. We said that, we will fund it and we will bring the certificate, we'll pay for you. And the knowledge matters. And then, so therefore, that's a sustainability factor. That's where the sustainability factor will come in. So, people sustainability, measurement, sustainability with the people, the culture. And we start reviewing. We had the daily morning meetings, flow meetings, morning head of functions meeting. And me as a CEO, I mean, we got involved on these meetings, whether physically or online. No, we're there, like, looking at what's happening yesterday, what's happened yesterday, right? And then the weekly meeting, weekly operations meeting, and the monthly, quarterly meetings. I mean, all we got involved as a team to really see that what's happening. So even these measurements also, like, you have a lagging measurements, you have leading, and you have predictive measurements. So we got the database right. Right? We got the IT department, we all supported each other. We got the data set right. And we had the right I would say, fields. So we were start predicting at that time, the time that I was leaving, that we were start predicting what's happening. At least 80% that we could have, we could really predict it. Because all we had the right database on that. What added now is the machine learning. So human will give a scenario, and we will teach the machine to give another scenario. So that's where that matters to what's going to happen. 80% with the past. Now with the other techniques, with all the AI tools, you'll be able to see balance at least 10% what's happening. So, I think my summary for you is you need to have a strategy. All of us should know, our learning is we got to know why we exist. And then we got to know all the supply chains involving creating that, need to know that, right? Can be your lowest, the segments, whoever supplying your supplier, they should know why they are supplying it, why their output is matter for the end game of that chain. So it's connecting all others. So then we have a nice story, and we can have a nice reward systems to really drive the business, not only internally, the market as well. So if you drive the market, and finally the benefits will flow into the internal as well. Yeah, so that's my.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. There are a couple of questions, but before that, I'll ask a small, quick question from Tusit. You said about the bottlenecks. So bottlenecks leads to improvement. Any thoughts you have share on that?
Yes, Professor. So usually in supply chain, you look at the flow. So we talk about three flows. What flows from upstream to downstream? Your goods or services. What flows from downstream to upstream? The funds or the money. And then what flows in both directions? The information. So bottlenecks can come to either of these flows. So a uniform flow is best. So there's no ready-made solution. So there can be automation to support it. There can be different models to support it. So the entire supply chain is about taking out the bottlenecks and to level out the capacities as much as possible so that the flow is uniform. So that's the core principle there.
Yeah, there's another question also from the audience. What is your prediction for supply chain industry in the upcoming years? What would be the new emerging trends?
In my view, the next few years, at least next 3 to 5 years, I would say it will be about integration along the supply chain and across it. Why? Because I think when Nipuna was presenting, he also spoke about the verticals or the silos within your organization. I think now the capability to integrate with your supply chain business partners, upstream, downstream, your vendors, your customers, that will take out a lot of uncertainty in your demand planning exercises, a lot of inventory that is getting maintained. So it will create a very lean supply chain. Then the second phenomenon, as we spoke about earlier, is about AI. I think AI is going to transform supply chain as well, because a lot of non-value creation jobs, when you look at it from the AI context, will also get eliminated from the supply chain. So I think we have an opportunity to make it really lean. For example, analysts and analytics. It's totally taken over by AI. You can upload your data and get all the analytics done through AI. You don't need a person to look at the data, create charts, etc. Secondary, things like presentations. So you need to continuously communicate to your teams, your stakeholders, what are your plans as supply chain. So that entire thing is again being taken over by AI. So entirely different teams and skills and capabilities that you will need. And if you look at from a supply chain perspective, what cannot AI do? I see three things. Firstly, judgment. So I think human element is very important there. Secondly, your creativity. To a certain extent, AI is able to be creative looking at what is already there. But if you are looking at a totally different thing, I don't think within supply chain AI is still capable of doing it. Thirdly, the empathy. Because in supply chain, you work with a lot of different people, human beings. AI is not able to take over the empathy part. I think those attributes will transform the supply chain to be much more agile but connected.
Yeah, thank you. This question is Prima. Prima has reduced the product cost through supply chain efficiencies, but why can't we see the reduction in maximum retail price, neither increase in retailer margins?
I think it's a very good question because if you look at the time period of from 22 to 25, but there are so many other costs that have gone up, right? So it's not you are optimizing because you got to do efficiencies. But if you look at all the other things that you invest for the future, you got to look at the current and emerging trends. And the investment also gets that cost is. I think it's not only the retail price. Retail price is one thing, but I think you got to look at much beyond than the retail price.
Yes, thank you. There are many questions. Majorities to breweries. I'll take one. Land Brewery controls over 80% of Sri Lanka's beer market. How does the company justify this dominance in a supposedly free and competitive economy?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think to start with, actually it's not 80, it's above 90%. So it's like this. Now, a couple of years, I think many years back, so Lion, I think Tusit can also add, Tusit is a veteran and, worked with Lion Brewery as well for a couple of years. So I think a couple of years back, many decades back, so it's one of the initial breweries where the Sri Lanka had also, and very close to local people and people's heart also. Everyone is loving the beer. Now, if you ask about why the market share is so much and is it fair, I think it's about the product quality and the how the brand preposition has made. It's not something to question about, because Lion, okay, even though that the local market share is so much, its main focus is also about exports, how we are growing outside of the country, how we can bring more and more foreign exchange to the country. Because before joining to the company also, what the thing I'm hearing from most of the foreigners that is coming to the country also, they really love the beer. So I think that is the secret behind it.
Okay, thank you.
Just add one point as an excellence. So market share is a reflection of consumer preferences. So I think that's the answer. So there's no manipulation that's done in the market. Consumers are given a free choice. I think Lion has a great product with a very good value proposition, very nice branding and a story. I think that's a reflection of the market share that the company enjoys. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think we have many questions, Sato sir, Prima, and also, but with the time constraints, we should conclude. Thank you, gentlemen. So we had a fruitful session today. So your participation is very valid for us. So with this, I conclude the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have some tokens to be presented. I would like to call upon Mr. Ranil Abhisekara, Vice President, of ISMM, Chairman of the National Supply Chain Day and the 53rd Anniversary Celebrations Committee. And at the same time, Mr. Darshana Jayasinghe, Subcommittee Chair of the Management, Venue Protocol, Facilities and Coordinating, Secretary of the Subcommittees, Mr. Janaka Vijayasinghe. Right, the first token of appreciation being presented to Mr. Tusit Gunavarna Surya, Chief Operating Officer, Siam City Cement Lanka Limited. And then Mr. Sajid Gunaratna, General Manager, Ceylon Agro Industries Limited. Mr. Nishan Heva Gamage, Chief Executive Officer, EFL 3PL Global. Dr. Samita Pereira, Chairman, Lanka Satosa Limited. And then, ladies and gentlemen, Senior Vice President Procurement, Lion Brewery, Ceylon PLC, Mr. Gihan Vidanapatirana. Right, gentlemen, if you can come closer, please, to take a group photograph. All of you. We have another token be presented to Professor Sanath Divakara, the Session Chair, Vice President, Chairman, PD and TC of Institute of Supply and Materials Management. Right, let's take the group photograph now.